Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. This is S4A Livestream number 55, being recorded on October 20, 2022. In this live stream, we're mostly going to talk about COVID, also Ebola, because there's an Ebola outbreak going on. We'll get into the details of that there. We will also talk with the chat. Probably, there'll be some continuity from earlier streams in the week. I saw some people posting comments about the housing crisis, which is, of course, what we left off on talking about in yesterday's stream. And also, I was doing some research on donors to the Democratic and Republican Party. This is really preliminary stuff, but I did want to share it and get some feedback in the live stream on that. So we'll do all of that today, but at least, 75-80% of today's show is going to be on COVID and Ebola. There really is a lot to talk about. So anyway, that's mostly what we'll be doing before we get into anything else, thanks to the current patrons whose names are on the screen. And I did update this today. So anyway, thanks to the patrons, patreon.com/socialismforall. I would make content even if nobody paid me, but the support helps me spend a lot more time on it than I would be able to do if nobody was supporting. So that's much appreciated. You can sign up for as little as $2 or more, whatever you want to do, and it can be recurring, it can be non-recurring, whatever you want. Of course, the recurring helps me to plan this out from month to month, so much appreciated there. We have a lot of long-term supporters, people whose names are in different colors. Yellow is for 1 year, green is for 2 years. So anyway, it's a great group of people overall who are following, supporting, engaging with, interacting with the channel, sending me story ideas, and just generally being comrades. I'm somebody who is putting a lot of information out there as far as resources, reading audiobooks and things. But, I'm a learning communist like many of the rest of you. And, I'm out to form those networks and those relationships along with you. So like, share, subscribe. That helps boost the channel, helps YouTube to recommend the content to more people. So yeah. All right, let's get back now to what we were doing. Let's check in with the chat about just anything that's on people's minds before we get into today's material. So I'm going to switch over and look at the chat. So one of our comrades from Greece, who's a member of the Greek communist movement over there, said, regarding the housing crisis, I did some research on rental prices in the U.S. Most were over $1,700 for a studio a month. I'm curious, what's the monthly salary of a school teacher or a waiter, for example? And somebody else said $2,100 for a studio over there. Somebody adds, working outside in central Phoenix, I can see the housing crisis and mental health crisis right in front of my eyes. And a few people weighing in, my individual income is less than $10,000 a year by a lot, but my household income is like $60,000 a year. So, you break that down as far as a mortgage. So this is one of the problems that's going on with mortgages. And yeah, there's differences between personal income and household income. Household income is a statistic that's often used by people who are trying to paint the situation as not that bad by combining, all of the income by household. It can be somewhat misleading, and it can be more useful to talk about individual income, I think, a lot of times. But anyway, to get approved for a mortgage, which we were talking about yesterday, especially after 2008 and the whole subprime mortgage crisis, they tightened up the lending criteria, where now, per federal government standards, the applicant has to show that they have income where they can make the mortgage payment and it won't be more than a third of their income. That's like roughly the guideline. They can work with that somewhat, but that's basically the guideline. So people may have a stellar renting history, but if they're paying 40 or 50% of their income to rent and, otherwise have, quote, stable finances, they still can't get a house. So you won't be able to step up, even if your rent payment is higher than the mortgage that you're applying for. So you could demonstrate that you've been paying $2,500 a month for the last 5 years and you haven't missed a single rent payment, but you could still be disqualified for that $2,200 a month mortgage, which is actually less, if it's over a third of your income. So it's an absolutely horrible system in so many ways. And no, I mean, people can't afford to pay, I mean, oh, this hits home for me, no pun intended, because, yeah, I have wanted to move. Basically, I've been wanting to move ever since the prices have been going up. I mean, it's just coincidentally my life situation. Prices started really going up several years ago, where now the housing market is just tied into knots. It's a pretzel. But you could at least find deals prior to that. And that was the last time that I had moved. Things were still, deals were still to be found. And then I went to check it out again, like, oh yeah, think I'll go check out the different area, etc. And it was like, what happened? Did I wake up in an alternate dimension because nothing is affordable? And it's gotten steadily worse over the last few years. So, yeah, I mean, if you were shocked by that, you were correct in being shocked by that. There's a massive housing crisis in the United States, which is, of course, causing a homelessness crisis, because homelessness is a problem of people not having housing. It's not a problem of drugs or anything else. It is primarily a problem of people not having housing. And for more information on that, you can look at yesterday's stream or other videos that we've done. We have a housing crisis playlist going on the channel. But it's so bad. Excuse me. Didn't do my usual throat clearing before we started recording today. Hold on. All right, maybe that'll be a little better. It's so bad that neither the Democrats nor the Republicans are even talking about it. They're not even spinning some kind of bullshit false solution. They're not even discussing it at all. So, did I see that this came out this week? ProPublica.org. How a secret rent algorithm pushes rents higher. Well, I did see all the stuff with Zillow. How basically Zillow it's a big real estate website in the US, and like everything else, there's no restrictions on it, so it's being gamed to make more money. And Zillow's actually been buying houses. So they have this huge glut of data on, like, really fine detail data on the US real estate market, which again, we need to decommodify all of this stuff yesterday. That needs to absolutely be one of the top 3 demands of a socialist movement, in my opinion. Decommodifying the basics like food and housing absolutely needs to be up there. But anyway, Zillow, which has all of this information, really detailed information about the housing market, got into the business of buying houses and then really manipulating the market to drive prices up. So I saw that like a year or two ago, and there's all different forms of this going on. It's sickening, and like I said, neither party will even discuss it. Maybe a bit more on the local level. I haven't even really seen that though. So, well, the problem is not technology. The problem is capitalism. Technology is its tools, and if your society allows exploitative practices, i.e. capitalism, then the exploiters will use those tools to further their exploitation. So that's really the issue there. Technology would be a lot safer if, in the hands of the working class for our own interests. But it's being used against us, and those tools are very sophisticated now. We're getting into an age of artificial intelligence. I mean, if anybody's seen those AI art generators, they're crazy. I saw one, actually, I liked it. I was subscribed to the AI Curio bot on Twitter, and somebody. It was such like a kind of a dumb prompt, but it was Beavis and Butthead playing in an abandoned playground, and they got some of the coolest pictures out of it. Actually, here I have it. Let me put one on the screen. Of course, I'm probably going to wind up picking like the worst one, but where were we? All right. Like that. That was made by an AI generator. That looks like it might have been in your favorite children's book or something. That's kind of amazing. Here's another one. So yeah, I mean that one, it's a little like washed out looking. There's two more. They always make four. All right, that one's like a bit odd. And then that. It kind of reminds me of those scary stories to tell in the dark book. But anyway, I mean, a computer made this. Where are we going to be at in 10 years? So, I mean, this, the technology is getting amazing. And in the right hands, it can do great things. And in the wrong hands, it can do truly horrific things. Anyway, kind of on that note, got into a glyphosate rabbit hole. GMOs have increased crops' herbicide tolerance. Do they need a little more punctuation in there, Health Revolt? Do they increase the amount of herbicide that's in our bodies? 80% of U.S. urine samples. Okay, that's one big sentence I can't parse, but also migrant workers who spray, bees getting killed. Yeah, that's what we were talking about yesterday, how a lot of the GMOs are engineered for the purpose, well, literally, they're engineered by pesticide companies for the plants to be more pesticide resistant, so that the farming can just be done, not with any careful management of the land, but by just dumping greater and greater quantities of pesticide onto the field. And then the plants will, like the crops, will survive because they've been engineered to withstand it, but nothing else in the environment is engineered to withstand that, and it sells a lot more pesticides and stuff like that. That's not really a good direction to be going in. Could GMOs under socialism be good? I still personally don't really think there's a major need for it, honestly. We already have enough food to feed everybody, and I'm that's one area I'm definitely skeptical of. Once you put altered genetic material out into the world, it's not easily recalled if it's recallable at all. So we can already feed everybody without GMOs. I'd like to see that happen first. Let's put it that way. So. And yeah, nothing to do. Is it true that homelessness is caused by artificial scarcity? Yes. Yes, it is. And we should be screaming about it daily. You're right. Absolutely. What do we think of money? That's a really. I know you asked that at the end of the show yesterday. Honestly, I don't even know how to get into that. We will be doing Marx's Capital soon. So we'll be getting into that there. But anyway. All right, let us now turn to the first thing, which is not yet on the COVID-related stuff. But I was playing around with OpenSecrets.org. Now, for people who don't know this website, let me see if I can figure out which chart I'm actually looking for. But for people who don't know Open Secrets, it's a website that tracks all of the donations to political campaigns. And here is basically some of the stuff that I was doing. So I was making a spreadsheet and entering in. What I did was I looked at the Democratic Party leadership. So basically the House and Senate leadership. And so you get 11 people. Mark Warner, Elizabeth Warren, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer. You can see their names at the top. And basically what I did was I included both campaign contributions and the leadership PAC money. and then I did the breakdown by industry, and this is what we got basically. And I might have like fat fingered a few of these, but it's pretty accurate actually. You can see the totals there on the left. Now I did, and then I also did the Republican Party. So what did I save that as? GOP, didn't I? Why am I not seeing? Oh, that's why. Yeah, so you get a similar thing. There are 9 Republicans at the head of the House and the Senate. So it's 11 versus 9. Still, it actually works out in the end. So that little highlighted sentence down at the end, basically the total dollar amount for the 11 Democrats was, I think, 105 million. And then for the GOP, 90 or 91 million if you round up. So basically, the total for the Republicans is 85.24% of the Dems. 9 divided by 11 is 81.82%. There are fewer people. So this basically tracks. If you break it down per congressman or senator, the GOP is taking in 10,075,000 per person, and the Dems are taking in 9.6 million per person. Or in other words, the Dems are having 96% of the money per person. So it's really close. In other words, I just wanted to establish that these were roughly comparable figures. So then, if we go into it by industry, I made some of the ugliest charts in the world, or really Open Office did. There's the Democrats, and this is a pie chart of breakdown by industry. You can see that the top is retired, then lawyers and law firms, then securities and investment, then real estate, then education, and that accounts for a little over 50%. From there, you can see that it breaks down, into smaller and smaller pieces. And overall, the breakdown is really similar between the Democrats and then the Republicans are on the right there. Again, retired is the biggest chunk. And then for them, Republicans and conservative PACs are the second biggest. Then also in third place, securities and investment. Then also in fourth place, real estate. Because what I wanted to get at is, CPUSA national leadership is on their thing of like hashtag vote against fascism, and they're getting absolutely dragged for it, and rightfully so. Can you vote against fascism? Technically you can. That's not to say that it's going to defeat fascism, but you can technically vote against fascism if you're voting for an anti-fascist party. But the Democrats are not an anti-fascist party. They are a fascist collaborating party. They're a fake anti-fascist party. They're not even remotely close to being an anti-fascist party. They prop up the Republicans at every turn. It's a completely toxic, insular, circular system that they're running there. So anyway, I wanted to look at, people are, is there a difference between the Democrats and the Republicans? So, there may be some analysis about this floating around somewhere. But I wanted to take a look myself, and this is one measure. It's like, okay, you look at the people at the top of the Senate and the House in both parties. Who's contributing to them? Do they represent substantially different industries? And can we learn anything from this glimpse? I mean, there's many different ways you can analyze the party, the breakdown and the support of the different parties by industries. Because even though neither party is a workers' party, it might be interesting at least to look at, just so you can see the Republican industry list, it might be interesting just to look at, are there big differences between the industries that are funding each party? So even though it might be just mainly a conflict between factions of the bourgeoisie, that could tell us something. And so I spent a little time and got into this. So that's sort of the pie. You can see there that overall, it's like the top 5, they constitute about 50%. It's a similar breakdown. So again, comparable sort of amounts of donations. So now if we go into, where is it? All charts. Yeah. So I did a few different iterations of this in a spreadsheet. Basically what you're looking at there is there were 39 industries that were represented, basically. And then some of these, how do I explain this? All right. So if you look at, no, let me show you another chart first, actually. That will make more sense here. Okay, there it is. So looking over on the left side, where it says sorted by industry in gray, so that's alphabetical. The industries that are represented are listed: accountants, agricultural services and products, air transport, automotive, on down to real estate, retail sales, retired, securities and investment, telecom, transportation unions, trucking, TV, movies and music, and women's issues. So there were 50 industries altogether. That's that green column all the way on the left, is just counting them. Now, what are all these other columns? Well, so the blue column is where it ranked as far as being a Democratic Party donor just by sheer quantity. And again, it's just to those 11 candidates. And then the reddish column, marked GOP, that is where that industry ranked as far as contributing to those 9 top Republicans. So, in the middle column, and then what's all the black about? Well, some of these didn't appear. So, for example, the first thing on the list, accountants, that appeared as number 26 out of 39 in the Democratic Party donor, list. But accountants were not represented in the top 39 industries for the GOP. That's why it's black, it's both black and blank. Then in the yellow difference column, the reason that that's in black is because we don't actually know from this analysis where it wound up in the GOP, but it's at least 14 lower. So we know it came in at least at number 40 or lower, but we don't know exactly where because accountants did not donate. They didn't wind up in the top 20 industries donating to those 9 GOP candidates. So that was basically the methodology. I could have explained that a little more clearly. It's campaign contributions and leadership PACs, top 20 industries per the 11 top Democrats and the 9 top Republicans. Okay. So yeah, for some of these, there's an industry that donated. So here's actually the biggest example probably is oil and gas. They were the 9th biggest donor to the Republican Party by, just dollar amount, but they did not make the top 40 for the Democrats because oil and gas, actually there weren't any contributions in the top 20 industries. Now it might have been number 21 for all 11 of those Democrats. I don't know because I only looked at the top 20. But anyway, that's basically how this was done. So the black is there's some amount of uncertainty there, but it was at least that amount if you're looking at the difference. So for example, another example, food and beverage in the left column. That was number 34 for the Republicans. It wasn't in the top 39 for Democrats. So we can see it was at least 6 higher for the Republicans. Now, the middle area is sorted by Democrats. So you can see it goes 1 through 39 in the blue column. So the number 1 industry donating to the Democrats in both the direct contributions and to the PACs, retired. And so if we go across and see what is that for GOP, okay, it's the same. Then next, lawyers and law firms. For Democrats, that's number 2. For GOP, that's number 7. So only a difference of 5 there. If it goes down 5 to the Republicans. Then number 3, securities and investment, was number 3 for both, so there's no difference. Then real estate, number 4 for Dems, number 4 for Republicans, no difference. Now here's a big difference. For Democrats, number 5 is education. For the GOP, it didn't even make the top 39. So it's at least 35 slots higher for the Democrats. So mark down education. People who work in education. There's a lot of teachers' unions and things like that that donate to the Democrats. That's probably why. Then, health professionals. Number 6 for Democrats, number 5 for the GOP. So that's really comparable. Number 7, insurance. 7 for Democrats and 6 for Republicans. So really comparable. Then, did I just say insurance? Yes, I did. So health professionals and insurance, almost identical in the same order, just shifted up one for Republican. Then the next one, either Democratic and liberal PACs or Republican and conservative PACs. For the Democrats, the Democratic and liberal PACs were number 8. For the Republicans, Republican and conservative PACs were number 2. So they're both in the top 10. Next, lobbyists. Number 9 for Democrats, number 10 for Republicans, very comparable. Number 10 for Democrats is electronics manufacturing and equipment. For the GOP, it was lower. It was in the top 25, though, at 24. Then miscellaneous finance, 11 for Democrats, number 14 for Republicans, very comparable. Next, TV, movies, and music. I think it is true that there's, more of a, people have more of a culturally open mind, do tend to lean more politically liberal. TV, movies, and music donated to Democrats more than to Republicans, but it was in the top 30 for Republicans at number 30. Then pharmaceuticals and health products, 13 for Democrats, 8 for Republicans. So that's a top 15 for both. Women's issues, this is another big difference. So I would count this along with education. Women's issues, number 14, Democratic donating industry, did not make the top 39, I think for fairly obvious reasons to the Republican Party. Business services, actually higher to Democrats here, 15 versus 27 for Republicans. Hospitals and nursing homes was number 16 for Democrats, number 15 for Republicans, very comparable. Also very comparable, health services and HMOs, 17 for Democrats, 18 for Republicans. Nonprofits, I was a little surprised to see this show up at all for the Republicans, but that was another one of the bigger differences. Number 18 for Democrats, 35 for Republicans. Pro-Israel, pretty comparable, 19 for Democrats, 23 for Republicans. Air transport, 20 versus 17, again pretty close. Bigger difference in leadership PACs, number 21 for Democrats, much higher for Republicans, 11. Now, leadership PACs are kind of more general funds that are used for things that aren't tied directly to the campaign. So anyway, the Republicans have a bit more of that leadership PAC. I don't know if it's fair to call it a slush fund, but miscellaneous fund. Civil servants and public officials donated to Democrats much more than to Republicans. That's 22 for Democrats, but didn't make the top 39 for Republicans. Electric utilities, fairly comparable, 23 for Democrats, 16 for Republicans. Commercial banks, again comparable, 24 for Democrats, 19 for Republicans. Public sector unions and accountants were 25 and 26 for Democrats, didn't make the list for Republicans. Miscellaneous defense, or we also call it war and weapons, 27 for Democrats, 32 for Republicans. So actually greater donations there to Democrats than to Republicans, but close, only 5 slots off. And when you get down to that level, you're not talking about a big percentage difference between slot number 32 and slot number 27. If you think back to the pie chart, those smaller slices are all pretty comparable in size. Number 28 was telecom services for Democrats, 22 for Republicans, only 6 slots of difference. Miscellaneous manufacturing and distributing, higher for Republicans at 13, 29 for Democrats. Printing and publishing, comparable, they're both in the 30s, 30 versus 39. Internet, finance and credit card companies, miscellaneous issues, transportation unions, and other were 31 through 36, omitting 35. That gave only to Democrats. So as we get lower down on the list, there are things that, there's a bit more of a divergence, because if it's number 32 and then it was at 8 points lower, then it's not going to show up on the chart. But anyway, if we scroll up a bit, we can see the ones at the bottom there that showed up for Republicans. Well, you can see it on the lower right. Those are the ones that showed up only for Democrats, that block of black in the more lower right. Women's issues down through education. Those are the industries that only gave to Democrats in the top 39. And then in the middle bottom there, automotive down through trucking. Those gave to Republicans, but not to Democrats. So what stands out there? These are the industries that gave to Republicans in the top 39, but did not give to these top Democrats, these 11 top Democrats, in their top 39. Automotive, building materials and equipment, chemical and relating manufacturing, food and beverage, for-profit education, forestry and forest products, general contractors, lodging and tourism, oil and gas, railroads, and trucking. So, I mean, a lot of what showed up in the only Democrats column is unions. So, public sector unions, transportation unions, building trade unions, women's issues also, civil servants and public officials, and educators. So those are some of the differences that you can see between who's donating at least to those top, roughly 10 Democrats and top roughly 10 Republicans as far as the people who control the House and the Senate right now. I did have one other chart. I think since I took the time to make it, we're going to take the time to look at it. There it is. So yeah, there's just another breakdown. The left is sorted by... this is what I did. So I took out all the ones that didn't donate to one party or the other. Those are on the right. And then it's sorted by Democrat or GOP. You can see just the industries that did donate to both, and you can compare. So if we go down the differences, and of course it's going to make more of a difference the higher it is on the list because it means more money. And actually what we see is kind of smaller differences. So again, retired at 0. That was the same for both. Lawyers and law firms was number 2 for Dems, 7 for GOP. Securities and investment, real estate were the same. Health professionals and insurance were only 1 off. Their respective ideological packs were both in the top 10. Lobbyists were either 9 or 10. So, as far as people looking at what are the differences between who's funding these parties. Now, some people say, well, this also includes employees. OpenSecrets.org has a note about that, which is that for these data to show up, it has to be larger amounts, like in the hundreds of dollars. So it tends to be people in more leadership positions within the industry. That's why it matters. Anyway, before we go on to anything else, I would just love to hear people's feedback on that. I'm not by any means, this was just some methodology I just came up with to satisfy some curiosity, more or less, but I'd be interested in feedback on it. All right, where were we? Tom Hartman put out a claim that Democrats are better on climate change, and I made the same exact breakdown on the oil and gas sector. It turns out most Congresspeople take big oil money, Democrat or Republican. Well, actually, in this case, the oil and gas did donate pretty consistently to the top Republicans, coming in at number 9 overall. But they didn't make the top 20 for any of these 11 Democrats. So there are definitely going to be other Democrats that take that money. When it came to these politicians, they didn't have any of it. I mean, that said, the overall effects of the parties is like, obviously the Democrats are not really out there fighting fossil fuels in any kind of a vigorous way. Nobody argues that money in politics is a good thing. The question is, how do we remove capitalism from a capitalistic institution? Well, the answer to that question is the pinned video on the S4A YouTube channel. It is The State and Revolution by Lenin, which I consider to be basically like, for U.S. leftists in particular, the questions that I hear most commonly asked are answered by that book. It's basically, a lot of people are confused. Anarchists, if we look at sort of the 3 broad trends in the left, you have anarchists, communists, and social democrats basically are reformers of capitalism. So the anarchists make the mistake with respect to the state. Hopefully I said all that correctly. They make the mistake with respect to the state of abolish the capitalist state and don't replace it with anything. Then you run into a lot of problems of how do you build socialism without any organized institution to do it. The social democrats make the mistake of not abolishing the capitalist state, but just trying to reform it and make it do things that we want. Both of these are mistakes. The Marxist-Leninist position is abolition of the parasite or capitalist state, and then the building of a proletarian state or non-state, depending on how you're looking at it, in order to build socialism. Because, until this happens on a global level, capitalism is going to be still a huge international threat. And anyway, this is all discussed in The State and Revolution, and that's why I pinned it on the channel. I think it's probably the single most important thing. That plus maybe Principles of Communism. Those are some of the most important things for, especially U.S. leftists to know. And Maria, thank you for the link there. All right. So, maybe also people watching on the YouTube can give some feedback. Again, it's not an exhaustive study of the Democratic and Republican parties, merely some of their most prominent members. It's, again, the minority and majority leaders in the House and Senate is what I looked at. Okay, so let's get into diseases. And I guess we can start off with, there'll be a lot of little snippets here. So this is from PBS. And basically, the Biden administration has declared the COVID public health emergency to be extended. They've been renewing the public health emergency repeatedly. The Republicans don't want them to do it because they want to get completely back to normal, even more than the Biden administration already has been. The Biden administration is holding out this public health emergency, which is extending Medicare, and it is doing some helpful things. Overall, though, the United States is getting crushed by COVID-19. Actually, looking at BioBot, I didn't get a screenshot. Let me put up the most recent one prior to this, though, this is from last week, COVID-19 wastewater monitoring. You can see we've been getting just crushed by COVID. This is how much COVID is, SARS coronavirus 2 virus particles are showing up in the wastewater. So forget testing because they're not counting the tests anymore. Actually, we're going to take a look at a study on that. Or not a study, but an article. Anyway, this week's updated on the 17th shows that you see how the very tail end of it is starting to curve up. Well, it's still curving up. So we're in the beginning of another surge right now. And it's being driven not by just one variant, but like half a dozen variants combined. And that's some of what we're also going to talk about today. Let me also mention just off the bat here, there is, for people who didn't want to or couldn't take the mRNA vaccines, the Novavax vaccine just got approved it got approved fairly recently as a primary series. So if you haven't gotten your primary series yet, you can get Novavax. There may be some special criteria for that, I'm not sure. But it's gotten FDA approval now that you can get this non-mRNA vaccine. It's, there it is. For adults ages 18 and older, it's now also, as of yesterday, been approved as a booster. So if you haven't gotten a booster, but it only is your first booster is the catch. I don't know why they're dragging their feet on this. I would run out and get it tomorrow. I've already gotten a booster. I would run out and get this tomorrow because everything I've read about Novavax is that it makes a much stronger antibody response than the mRNA shots. The mRNA shots are useful, but the coverage is thinner than it should be, and it's temporary. It fades. I think what I was reading about the bivalent shot, it's good for about 3 months, and then you're kind of back to square one. So, I would get Novavax. We're waiting on it being approved as a second booster shot. It's currently, again, only the first booster shot. This to me, I mean, go read about it, ask your healthcare provider if you have one, if it's, right for you. But from everything I've been reading about it, this is, I think, far superior to the mRNA. Again, I've gotten the mRNA 3 times. It didn't cause me any major problems. I know some people have had, reported problems, real and imaginary, from it. But for the people who are like, mRNA, it's a gene therapy, blah, 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 all of that's garbage. But for the people who were holdouts because of it's an mRNA vaccine and it's a newer technology. I mean, it's been research and development for 20 years. It's been, back there in the labs for 20 years. This was the first time that mRNA technology was used on a mass scale. That is true, but it's not like they just invented it in 2019. It's, again, been in research and development for 20 years. But this is not an mRNA vaccine. So if that was what was holding you up, go get a Novavax because you're going to fucking need it. This winter is going to be absolutely awful, as I think we're going to see in some of these stories. But that is good news. And actually, some people want the Novavax so much that so right now there's no federal vaccine database. So within your state, there will be, probably in most states. So, but what people are doing is if they live near a state border, they're crossing the state border, going to another state, and just saying, oh, I haven't gotten any shots yet. And they're getting the Novavax that way. That's how badly people want this who have been following it closely. So people are actually lying and crossing state lines to get the Novavax. As far as I know, in most places, there's no penalty. Like, you're not supposed to do it. There's no penalty. I think that some states, to give you the vaccine, they require that you show proof of residency. Not all states do that. Anyway, this is the crazy kind of situation that we're in. Just approve the fucking Novavax for second booster or third booster, because they've already done this, I think, in Canada, Japan, EU, Australia, New Zealand. It's safe. It's being used widely around the world by hundreds of millions of people. Just approve the fucking thing. But anyway, it has been approved as primary and first booster now, which I do think is good news. All right. Now, what are we going to go into first today? I have my little list of stuff. Yeah, actually, speaking of what's going on... Oh, yeah, that's why. So this was a story from Gothamist, why New York City isn't recording most at-home COVID tests and what officials could be missing. I'm not going to go through this entire article right now, but I did just want to remind people that when I said, they're not counting the cases anymore, this is what I mean. Also, wanted to remind people that there is, like last winter, most likely going to be a rapid test shortage as we head into later fall and winter. Definitely by Thanksgiving, there's probably going to be a major, major surge happening. Go out, get extra rapid tests now if you want them, because you may not be able to find them in a month or two. So just a sort of public service announcement on that. Now, another little snippet. This is out of Italy. COVID-19 hospital admissions in Italy for ages 0 to 19. This is a pediatric group. 2020 was 4,112. 2021, 6,178. 2022, 13,172. Do you see a trend there? I'm talking about pediatric hospital admissions. So, as far as this whole myth that it's safe for kids can't get COVID. No, that's not even slightly true. Now, what else do we have here? Speaking of children, there's a spike in respiratory illnesses. It's not just COVID. This is from about a week ago. And what does this article say? I have so many things in the folder right now. It's hard scrolling through the list. The United States is seeing a significant spike in respiratory illness among children. Let me just also, as a PSA, point out, they're predicting a really bad flu season this year as well. Now, part of that prediction may be cover for COVID. They can be like, oh, wow, you got a really bad flu there. Yeah, no, it's actually COVID. But I mean, the flu is a separate thing, and you can get both. That's not a good situation. Anyway, the U.S. is seeing a significant spike in respiratory illness among children. Sick kids are crowding emergency rooms in various parts of the country, and some pediatric hospitals say that they're running out of beds. But this uptick in illness has largely been due to viruses other than the coronavirus, like RSV, enteroviruses, and rhinovirus. While respiratory infections typically surge in the winter months, and let's point out here, COVID is not just a respiratory illness. It does affect the lung probably more than anything else, but close behind are other organs, your blood vessels, your heart, kidneys, liver, brain and nervous system, muscles. It really affects most of your major organs. Anyway, quote, rates are as high as 25% of those who have tested positive for RSV. That's quite unusual for October. We would typically start to see higher rates in November, December, and January, said Dr. Ibukan-Kalu, a specialist in pediatric infectious diseases at Duke's Children's Hospital in Durham, North Carolina. Kalu said that while respiratory viruses like RSV can be severe in young infants, older children were also beginning to experience severe symptoms that required hospitalization to help with breathing. When combined with the fact that some children may already have underlying illnesses that require them to receive oxygen at home when they get a viral infection, a hospital system already feeling the strain from the COVID pandemic is once again being slammed with demand for care. I was just reading a story about this earlier today or last night, where the hospitals, again, they're setting up beds in the hall because they're filling up, and it's mid-October right now. This is not good. Quote, we've been strapped and hospitals have sort of been functioning at the edge of how they can function, which of course is profitable for the hospitals, which that needs to be decommodified and not run for profit. We're seeing more people requiring help and fewer beds available, largely due to staffing needs. This combination is going to create more and more problems. For now, the issue is concentrated among younger patients, but Kalu said that with the colder months coming up, it could begin to impact more people. As we see more viral infections in kids, we will see a similar pattern in adults, she said. The reason for more severe illnesses with some of these viruses is the smaller airways in kids. Because the viruses get in there and cause such a high amount of inflammation, they're unable to clear out a lot of these secretions or get air in. The CDC issued a health advisory in September saying that healthcare providers and hospitals had alerted the authority in August, quote, about increases in pediatric hospitalizations in patients with severe respiratory illness who also tested positive for rhinovirus, RV, and or enterovirus, EV. In the advisory, hospitals were guided to keep heightened awareness for these more severe infections when treating pediatric patients, and parents were instructed to keep an eye out for specific symptoms like difficulty breathing and the sudden onset of limb weakness. Kalu said that if parents notice these symptoms of infection, in addition to a runny nose, cough, or a fever, they can usually be managed at home with attentive care. No real discussion about not letting these spread throughout the home, but anyway. Quote, it is good for you to contact your provider and talk through symptoms, she said, and be aware that if you see any of these symptoms worsening, specifically a child is having issues breathing or is constantly throwing up or unable to drink or eat, it would be important to ensure that they get seen to assess if they need oxygen support or if they need help with maintaining their hydration. So that's the end of article. I think they left out a number of issues, such as people catching COVID in healthcare institutions, like getting COVID while you're in the hospital. We covered a story recently about how the CDC is no longer requiring masking in places like some hospitals, no longer required to mask. I don't know what they're thinking at this point, because already people were getting COVID in the hospitals. So now that's just going to be an even worse situation. Anyway, speaking of, pandemic mitigation measures and what sort of people want to be done about this, let's look. This is from the Kaiser KFF Foundation, the KFF COVID-19 Vaccine Monitor. So this isn't the entire page, but I grabbed 5 screenshots from it. A slim majority of people say that they're wearing a mask every or most of the time. and higher shares among Democrats, lower income, Black and Hispanic adults. So you can see on the right there a graphic. In the last 30 days, how often, if at all, have you worn a protective mask indoors in public places? So total, 28% say every time. And let me just say, I'm not seeing 28% of the people around me in indoor places wearing a mask. Like, not even, it's literally closer to 1 or 2%. So I'm not really sure what's going on. But between every time and most of the time, supposedly there's a majority there of 51%. I'm not even seeing anything close to that. Maybe on the best day I'm seeing 15, 20%. So I don't know. Some of the time is an additional 29%, and only 19% say never. So that's interesting, to say the least. But of people who say that they are every time, a majority of Black respondents, 61%, said yes. Then the next largest group was Hispanic, 42%, and then 18% white. So definitely some strong discrepancies. You know, again, intersectionality matters. This is a pretty big breakdown there. So clearly, white people, the least likely to wear a mask. Hispanics, more than twice as likely as whites to wear a mask every time. And then Blacks, more than 3 times as likely, at least per these the self-reported responses. But still, this is consistent with what we've seen in other public opinion polls that have done a race or ethnicity breakdown as far as people's preferences for having a mask mandate. So it is a similar type of breakdown. Then you can see again, the higher the household income, the less likely to wear a mask. The lower the household income, the more likely. Party ID, Democrats, 46% likely to say every time. Independents only a quarter. Republicans 10% of the time. And might I just ask, if you are a Republican who's wearing a mask every time, why are you a Republican exactly? Your party doesn't even come close to supporting that. Democrats don't either, but Republicans are like, Democrats are at least neutral to negligent on it. Republicans, practically having like public mask burnings. Saw a video recently about some guy attacking somebody on the subway about that. So, yeah. Anyway, and then as far as by COVID-19 vaccination status, people who are vaccinated more likely to say that they are masking than unvaccinated. And this is probably just out of, the vaccination being a representation of concern with the fact that COVID-19 is a real thing. Also, people with a chronic health condition more likely than those who aren't. What else do we have from the KFF here? 6 in 10 adults say that people should continue masking to avoid surges with splits by partisanship, income, and race. So, yeah, 40% of everyone said people should stop wearing masks in most public places so that things can get back to normal. So not wearing a mask is not going to get you back to normal. Not wearing a mask is going to get you more COVID. I mean, that's like, I don't even know, that is such poor reasoning. I can't even explain it. But yeah, a majority of people, 6-4, 3-2, are saying people should continue to wear masks in some public places. I don't know why you would differentiate between one public place and not another. But anyway, to minimize the spread of COVID and avoid another surge. And the thing about instituting a mask mandate after a surge has already started, well, you may help contain the surge, but it's too late at that point. But look here at the race and ethnicity breakdown. Black respondents, 9 out of 10 say yes, keep masking. Hispanics, 7 out of 10. And then again, with whites, it's 50-50. Again, similar breakdown on household income. So the less white and the poorer you are, the more likely you are to support masking and to be concerned about this thing, generally speaking. Some other entries in the chart there as well. Moving on to the next screen. Many workers, including 6 in 10 of those earning less than $40,000, report having to miss work during the past 3 months due to COVID concerns. And there's a breakdown there. Percent who say that they had to miss work in the past 3 months because One, they had to quarantine during a COVID-19 exposure. That's a quarter of people. They tested positive, was a fifth of people. Their place of work was closed or had reduced hours due to COVID-19 concerns. That was an eighth of people. They had to stay home with a child who had to quarantine, or the child switched to online learning. That was more than a quarter. And then the overall percentage of people who had to miss work for any of those reasons, 42%. But you can see that the breakdown by income level disproportionately hits people making less than 40,000 a year. So again, where are the consequences falling? It's on people with less money. And that continuing that, Black and Hispanic adults are more likely to have experienced negative impacts of the pandemic. So again, in a capitalist and racist society, where do the worst harms fall? They fall on the poor, and they fall on discriminated against, well, we live in a white supremacist society specifically, so people who are not white. Black and Hispanic adults more likely to have experienced negative impacts, including impact on their ability to pay for basic necessities. They or another adult in their household have fallen behind on paying household expenses. Worried that they will become seriously sick from COVID is 41% of people in the Black respondent community, 57% in Hispanic, and then the whites are doing fine. Oh, COVID's a whatever Chinese hoax, 27%. So you see the breakdown of the sort of more reactionary, unscientific views here. It's falling towards whites and wealthier people. So, close friend and or family member died of COVID. Black 40%, Hispanic 34%, 27% white. Finally, Black and Hispanic parents are less likely than white parents to feel that their child is very safe from COVID-19 at school. So thinking about your child's risk of exposure to COVID-19, do you think your child is very safe, somewhat safe, not too safe, or not at all safe when they're at school? You could just say somewhat unsafe, I guess, but whatever. Total, 44% said very safe, and then somewhat safe, 40%. So a lot of people are estimating pretty high sense of safety as far as school overall, although Black and Hispanic, much less likely than white respondents to be confident that their child's schooling conditions are, actually going to be amenable to like them not catching COVID. Let's catch up with the chat before we go into anything else here. All right, here we are. DeSantis has made sure to squelch the numbers as much as possible. He's been awful down in Florida, like telling kids to take their masks off. There was some event he was at telling the kids to take the masks off and stop the, quote, COVID theater. Like, fuck you, buddy. The virus is real. Got the bivalent Pfizer booster yesterday and had a sore arm and body aches all day, but I'll take the peace of mind. Yeah, that's roughly what I had when I got the booster. I had a sore arm for like 36 hours. That was about it, though. I think, I got my booster shot last December, and I don't actually remember really any discomfort from the booster shot at all. Still wearing my mask every time indoors. Well, because it only takes one exposure to get sick, You don't really get a freebie with COVID. I get funny looks when I'm out wearing a mask, especially in the Pew Pew store. Yeah, I'll bet. But it's, have the peace of mind you're at least not catching COVID. You can catch a few doses of side-eye, but don't catch a virus. I know that's lame, but, puns are puns. I barely see anyone else wearing masks when I go out. That's mostly. I mean, it depends where I go, but by and large, yeah. Recently, I've tested positive for COVID. I'm taking precautions to protect my family members. Your COVID coverage is priceless, S4A. You seem to be the only person who cares about this issue, as it feels like society has abandoned, its citizens, especially the most vulnerable. Yeah, it shouldn't be falling onto a podcast with 10,000 followers to be doing this. Let me eagerly agree there. Yeah, and when you do see people wearing masks, it's like the surgical masks that do not protect against airborne spread. To protect against airborne particles, it has to form a tight-fitting seal, like an N95 or well-fitting KN95 or something to that effect. Cloth masks are barely doing a thing. I have family in Chicago, and 3 months ago they said in restaurants you still wear a mask to get to the booth, so I think in cities and more dense areas the mask lasted a bit longer. I think that may be on a city-by-city basis, because that's not everywhere. Yeah, sample size is 2. Where I am, no stores or restaurants are requiring masks at all. Yep. Get back to normal. What's with this weird need to pretend COVID isn't real or has just disappeared? It's look at what's going on with the economy and the supply chain and everything. They need, like, this is not, that's straining the system. That's the problem. So they need people to keep working, to disregard their health. Capitalism always asks workers to overlook their basic material interests. This is just sort of heightening that. And they need you to, like, not care about your own life, basically. Yeah, is there going to be an Ebola outbreak in the USA? I'll be covering that, and I'll do that next, and then we'll go back to more COVID. I like the Asian, Korean, Japanese restaurant model. They use masks and have a personalized booth, and the people there care about disinfecting the places. At least that's what I get from the YouTube cooking videos. That's still, I mean, COVID is airborne, so I don't know exactly what they're doing. All of the wait staff are still going to be, and anybody handling the plates too is still going to be at risk there, unless you're, well, even if you're wearing an N95, because there's always, rubbing your eyes and stuff like that too. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely ways you can manage the risk better, you know. Do I know anything about how safe it is to socialize without masks? Yes. It used to be that the older variants were harder to catch in the open air. I would not chance it at all anymore with BA.5 and everything. For each of these new variants, it's gone up about 20-25% in contagiousness. And yeah, that was clear by the summer that people could catch COVID outside. You need a mask all the time. That's the bottom line. So, hasn't COVID followed normalization? Normalization is not really a disease term. If you're talking about endemicity, no, it's not endemic. Endemic is when the rate is neither rising nor falling. That's not the pattern that we're seeing. I put it on the screen before. There's a large plateau, there's still surges, and it's going to surge again this winter most likely. So the process of becoming ever present in the community, that's not how this works at all. Things don't just become ever present in the community. We know that COVID immunity is temporary, partial. So even if you have some immunity to COVID, you're still probably going to get COVID. It just may not be as severe as it would have been 2 months ago. But also that partial and temporary immunity is coming at a huge risk of the toll that the infection's taking on your body. The infection that, the prior infection that gives you that temporary and partial immunity, it's taking an enormous inflammatory toll on your body. It's causing organ damage. Also, SARS coronavirus 2 can infect T cells directly, so it's impairing your immune system. So no, there's nothing like, quote, normalization or it's not endemic. Even if it was endemic, malaria is endemic in some places. It doesn't mean that it's harmless. Um, yeah, I don't know if you missed the chart I put up before, but let me put it up again. There is a significant outbreak. COVID is literally worse right now than ever. There are fewer deaths in part because the million most vulnerable people have already died. So that's not exactly a small toll. But there's your chart of COVID wastewater. What's been going on this year? It's like the three previous surges, excluding Omicron, combined, and maybe then some. So that's the situation we're actually in. And we've got half a dozen new variants that we're going to cover today coming in. So no, nothing about this is, normal or contained. And the virus is constantly mutating. New strains are coming out all the time. Actually, the XBB variant, we're going to look at immune escape. It's the most, it can completely outrun your immune system and monoclonal antibodies. So there's no treatment for it anymore. No, COVID is not safer. There's nothing about it. This is completely misinformation, and you should really not post so many comments. Yeah, I talked to a former vet who dealt with a coronavirus outbreak in cats decades ago. They were never able to build immunity because the virus kept mutating. It's still an issue today. That is correct. Yeah, it's been a trip living here through this. Florida also declared wrestlers as essential workers. Ooh. I had an awful fever and shakes from the booster, but it's a hell of a lot better than actually getting COVID. Yes, I mean it's you can't see your liver with your eyes, but you're significantly less injured by the vaccine than you would be by the virus. Your liver, for example. Um, yeah. There's a lot of experts here, just sort of, I use experts advisedly, in the comments laughing off pieces of fact. I don't know. We're gonna cover some more stuff in a minute. In fact, let's do Ebola now, and then we'll come back to COVID stuff. And again, the Ebola stuff at this point, it's still pretty early stage, preliminary. Let's see what we've got. Here is an article from the Telegraph. Ebola hits the Ugandan capital as the president blames the victim for, quote, poisoning others. Ebola is a hemorrhagic fever with a high fatality rate, often over 50%. The strain spreading has no known vaccine. It's by Harriet Barber from October 12, 2022. I got 3 things on this for this week. So, where's the top of this thing? At least 4 suspected cases of Ebola were being monitored in Uganda's capital, Kampala, on Wednesday, after the capital's first death on Friday, the Telegraph understands. And by the way, we may cover it in here or not, but in what I was reading about this, basically in all the previous Ebola outbreaks, the concern was always that it would hit the capital city. This time it has, so... the Ministry of Health has confirmed 54 cases in total across the country, and more than 1,000 close contacts are now being monitored across 5 districts. The Kampala death was the 19th fatality from the country's outbreak, though a further 20 deaths have been classed as probable Ebola cases. Dr. Jane Ruth Aseng, the health minister, said that after developing symptoms, the Kampala victim ran away from his home village and visited a traditional healer in a second region before traveling to Kampala. Health officials now fear that the virus could spread within the capital, which has directed flights to Europe and the United States as well as other destinations. So my understanding is that there were 5 flights from Uganda to the United States, including Chicago. I'm not sure I want to say Miami, but I'm not sure what the other cities were. At a briefing on Wednesday night, which was broadcast on all TV and radio stations in Uganda, President Yoweri Museveni described Kampala as facing a, quote, moderate risk from the virus. Speaking about how the Kampala case traveled despite being at risk of carrying the virus, he said he was poisoning all of these people he was approaching. UK sources told the Telegraph a further 4 suspected cases had been identified in Kampala. However, the president appeared to rule this out during his television appearance. Quote, I would like to inform that there is no confirmed case of Ebola in Kampala City. The contacts of the person that died at Kirudu Hospital are all known and under control, he said. Ebola is a hemorrhagic fever with a high fatality rate, often over 50%. The strain spreading in Uganda is the Ebola Sudanese variant, which has no known vaccine. Symptoms take between 2 and 21 days to develop after contact, and people are not contagious until symptoms appear. The first symptoms, known as dry symptoms, are difficult to distinguish from other illnesses and include fever, headache, and muscle pains. These later progress to the wet stage, which includes vomiting, diarrhea, hiccuping, and bleeding. The world has battled sporadic Ebola outbreaks since 1976, the most deadly of which killed more than 11,000 people across Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia between 2014 and 2016. Dr. Benjamin Black, an Ebola expert who worked during the West Africa outbreak, said that the news that a carrier of Ebola made it to Kampala is, quote, very significant. Quote, the Kampala case strikes me as similar to stories we heard in the West Africa outbreak connected with onward transmission, Dr. Black said. The man traveled through at least 2 other districts before Kampala and visited a traditional healer once he was unwell. We don't know how many other people the healer then treated. This was a major issue in the West Africa outbreak. Traditional healers were linked with hundreds of infections. Ebola is less contagious than COVID-19, spreading through contact with the blood or body fluids of an infected animal or person. Bats and other wild animals are the suspected reservoirs of the virus. Dr. Black added that it is, quote, entirely possible that the Kampala case will be contained, as various actors, including the World Health Organization and NGOs like the Red Cross and Doctors Without Borders, are involved in the response. However, international concern is rising. Last week, the U.S. announced that all arrivals from Uganda would be directed to 5 sites for screening. Passengers will have their temperatures and virus symptoms checked and will be asked for contact details. Following the U.S. announcement, the UK government on Thursday told doctors to be on high alert for symptoms and to stock up on personal protective equipment. The UK HSA said yesterday that the risk to the public in the UK remains low. UK HSA constantly monitors emerging infection threats in collaboration with partners across the world, said Dr. Meera Chand, UK HSA Director of Clinical and Emerging Infection. We are aware of an outbreak of Ebola cases in Uganda and are monitoring the situation closely. The risk to the public in the UK is very low. The Telegraph understands that UK HSA is deploying a team to Uganda and will rerun its risk assessment of the threat posed to the UK following the death in Kampala. UK airport restrictions are said not to be on the cards, but more detailed follow-up of people arriving in the UK from Uganda could be. The European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control has called for travelers to be screened before exiting Uganda. Quote, both experience and evidence show that exit screening can be an effective measure to support the containment of the disease spread, the ECDC said. Cases were first detected in September in the Mubende district of Uganda, 50 miles west of the capital, among people living around a gold mine. A 24-year-old man was the first known Ebola death, and 6 members of his family also died. 4 health workers have also been among the victims, including a doctor from Tanzania. Gold traders are highly mobile, particularly along the busy highway that runs between Kampala and the Democratic Republic of Congo to the west. The current Ebola outbreak is the 7th in the East African country since the deadliest in 2000, which killed 224 of 425 people infected. So again, that's over a 50% mortality rate. The Ugandan authorities are urging people to avoid large gatherings, crowded places like markets, parties, weddings, and funerals. As worry spreads, some schools are seeing just half their pupils attending classes, according to the British Medical Journal. And you can see a classroom where there's only 1 kid who showed up. An Ebola task force formed in 2000 has been reactivated, and the unit includes doctors and nurses from various institutions, including the military. In previous outbreaks, the virus has spread quickly after those infected refused to go to healthcare facilities, instead preferring for their families to care for them from home, from them at home. doesn't make sense, said Dr. Andrei Wolems, the regional medical director of International SOS, who was also involved in efforts to curb previous Ebola outbreaks. The Ugandan Health Secretary, Jane Asang, has said that local people initially thought that the new Ebola outbreak was caused by witchcraft and so didn't seek medical care. That's never really a good go-to thought in a crisis. The World Health Organization chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said on Wednesday that clinical trials would start within weeks on vaccines to combat the strain of Ebola behind the Ugandan outbreak. So they're working on a vaccine, but it does not exist yet. So, speaking of viruses that we don't usually see in the U.S., but had big outbreaks, monkeypox. Previous outbreak was under 300 people in the United States. That was the biggest on record. We had one about 100 times bigger than that, 30,000 people. And it's still going. It's slowed down, but it's still going. All right. Another article on this. Ebola is back and vaccines don't work against it. This is from Wired on October 18, so just 2 days ago. Public health officials are racing to contain an outbreak in Uganda. It's an urgent warning to the rest of the world. So this is more recent than the one that we just read, which was from last week. The outbreak began on September 15. A 24-year-old man suffering from a high fever and convulsions was admitted to Mubende Regional Referral Hospital in Uganda. He had bleeding in his eyes and had been passing blood-stained vomit and diarrhea. The man died on September 19. The next day, laboratory tests confirmed the worst fears of those caring for him. Ebola was back. And this outbreak is different. Ebola is a disease of multitudes. For the most common species of the virus, successful vaccines have already been developed, but for others, no vaccine exists. To the dismay of health officials in Uganda, this version of the virus, found in the body at Mubende, was from the Sudan species, for which there is no vaccine. Other Ebola deaths have also been reported in the region. 6 people from the man's family, 3 adults and 3 children, also died between September 11 and 15. The Uganda Ministry of Health dispatched a rapid response team to the affected villages in Mubende district to do a verbal autopsy, collecting information on the likely cause of death from the local people. The risk of infection from conducting a physical autopsy would be too high, so they can't look at his body. By October 16, the Ministry of Health had reported 60 confirmed cases of Ebola, having registered 11 new cases in the previous 2 weeks. In total, 24 deaths have been confirmed, including 4 among health workers, along with 24 recoveries. That as many people have died as have recovered is striking, but not surprising. Ebola is a rare but highly dangerous viral disease that kills roughly 50% of people who fall ill with it. Fruit bats are thought to be the natural host of the virus, but it can also infect primates, rodents, and humans, spreading via the bodily fluids of infected animals or people, both alive and dead. Ebola has flared up intermittently in Africa for more than 40 years, most notably during an outbreak between 2013 and 16 that infected 28,000 people and took more than 11,000 lives. During that outbreak, experimental vaccines against the most common form of the virus, the Zaire species, could be tested. They worked well and have since been approved and used to protect people, but developing vaccines for rare viruses like Ebola is always a game of cat and mouse. The Sudan virus behind the current outbreak has caused only a handful of human cases over the past 2 decades. Work to develop vaccines to target this virus is underway, but none have been fully tested, let alone finished. Using a Zaire vaccine against the Sudan virus isn't an option, says Pontiano Kalibu, director of the Uganda Virus Research Institute. Quote, "This has already been proven in the laboratory. The neutralizing antibodies do not respond," he says. This means 2 things, that surveillance and physical control measures are currently the only tools available for limiting the virus's spread, and that a working vaccine needs to be found as quickly as possible. The candidate that's farthest along is the single-dose CHAD3 Ebola Sudan vaccine, which is being developed by the Sabin Vaccine Institute, a nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. Or is that pronounced CHAD3? I'm not sure. By working with the World Health Organization, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, and other organizations, the Institute is planning to run a clinical trial in the current outbreak to see how well the vaccine works. But there are only 100 doses available. With limited supply, health officials plan to give doses of the vaccine to immediate contacts of confirmed Ebola cases. Scientists then hope to use these contacts as potential candidates in the vaccine's clinical trial, though the exact testing protocol they'll use is still being worked out. So they're hoping for accelerated production from the Vaccine Institute now that more doses are needed, but even if the number of vaccines used in the trial is small, they will still provide useful data. Trials use power calculation, Karenga says, referring to sums that allow researchers to work out the minimum number of people you need to involve to see whether a vaccine or medicine has an effect. You need like a large enough sample size. A well-designed trial in an emergency situation in need of a drastic change of course, such as whether a vaccine stops someone from getting or dying from a severe disease like Ebola, doesn't necessarily need to involve lots of people. Doses of another... I gotta take a sip here. My throat is dry. Doses of another candidate vaccine, designed to protect against both the Zaire and Sudan forms of the virus and developed by the University of Oxford, are also being sent to help in the outbreak. But the WHO has said that vaccine trials won't start for another couple of weeks, meaning that for now, Ugandan authorities are relying on non-pharmaceutical interventions. Contact tracing is being used to follow people who have been close to known cases, with more than 1,500 contacts having been traced as of October 16. Over a third of these are no longer being followed, having been traced for 21 days without developing symptoms. New cases are also being picked up outside of the contacts being traced, says Daniel Kayabayinze, Director of Public Health at Uganda's Ministry of Health. Quote, "It's a good sign of optimal surveillance," he says. But it's also a sign that the limits of the outbreak are still uncertain. On October 12, the Ministry of Health announced that a man had died of Ebola in a hospital in Kampala, having traveled to the capital from his local village. 3 days later, 2 districts, Mubende and Kasanda, entered a 3-week lockdown to try to stop the virus spreading. Bars, nightclubs, and places of worship have been closed, and only cargo trucks are allowed to enter or leave the districts. With the risk of infection so high, trained teams are also being dispatched to bury the dead, and at the same time they're helping with the contact tracing, taking the details of all people the deceased could have had contact with. The Ministry of Health is also training health workers to handle Ebola cases, and communities are mobilizing volunteers and those who have previously worked in Ebola case management to take part in control efforts. Neighboring countries have also stepped up their vigilance. Common border points between Uganda, Rwanda, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo are both surveilling the virus and isolating known contacts. In Uganda, border health control teams are managing any emergency cases of Ebola among travelers. It's a challenge. Quote, "The tests we have don't work for the 2 viruses," says Otim Patrick Ramadan, Health Emergency Officer at the WHO Regional Office for Africa. 2 monoclonal antibody treatments, which enlist the immune system to fight against diseases, recommended for treating the Zaire virus also don't work against the Sudan virus, he says. Last pane of this story. Despite the hard task that Uganda faces, the WHO has expressed optimism about its ability to tackle the outbreak. Thanks to its expertise, action has been taken quickly to detect the virus, and we can bank on this knowledge to halt the spread of infections. Matshidiso Moeti, the WHO Regional Director for Africa, said on October 6. Uganda, I've been reading way too much the past 3 days. Uganda is no stranger to effective Ebola control. If COVID-19 was a big reminder of the threat of emerging infectious diseases, then Ebola is a quieter but equally dire warning. To a degree, the world got lucky with the pandemic. Well, let's review in January or February. If something as transmissible as SARS coronavirus 2 and as deadly as Ebola emerged in the future, the resulting outbreak would change the course of history. And we may be on track for that right now, actually. To prepare for the worst-case scenario, lessons must be learned from this outbreak and where it came from. Ebola and COVID-19 are both diseases that jump to humans because humanity continues to encroach on wild areas of the planet. Quote, "People are going to look for food, or they are mining, or it's leisure activities," says Otim. Quote, "As the frequency and interaction between humans and animals increases, Freudian slip. We pick up these viruses from them. Last piece, 4 panes on Ebola. This is from Chris Turnbull at Enemy in a State on Twitter. This is what an Ebola outbreak looks like. It's highly likely that the virus has or will spread globally. The Uganda government has ruled out a lockdown. Well, they're doing some now. And the international trade fair continued despite the outbreak. So we did read in the other stories that there was a lockdown, but perhaps not initially. And where else did this go? People who have Ebola can go from feeling a bit flu-like to bleeding out the mouth and ears pretty quickly. So it's quite possible that people wake up one morning, power through it, and then the above happens. People are supposed to be the most infectious when they have symptoms, which what we were reading before, which kind of surprised me that they're like, oh, people who don't have symptoms yet can't spread it. And it's like, why would you, there's something called the precautionary principle, especially if we're dealing with a strain that isn't as well known and that there's no treatment for. Could we at least try to err on the side of caution a little bit? Anyway, people are supposed to be the most infectious when they have symptoms, and the more severe the symptoms are, the more infectious they are. So having people walk around mass events like markets while shedding Ebola is not great. Now that we see how the crisis looks in everyday life, we can easily imagine it coming to the West, where it will no doubt be welcomed with open arms as we watch people rapidly die around us. It's true. It's like people are almost just, looking for more stuff to film or something. Like, here, die. That'll be funny. I'll put you in a fail-vid compilation. The funny thing is, such an event probably wouldn't even make the local news in the UK. We've all become accustomed to just seeing people collapse a la Wuhan virus 2020 as it's normal now. The comments section on that story sheds further light on the dire situation. Dear colleagues, Ebola confirmed in Kirudu. Index case passed on 2 days ago, tested positive to EVD. Patient had a past travel history to Mubende. Left went to Luwero to see a witch doctor, but is a resident of Natiti. So far, 42 contacts listed, including 10 healthcare workers. 2 contacts are, it goes on. Got cut off. African Regional Coordinator says that the Ebola areas need to be locked down now. So this was kind of in the early stage as it was going. I'm sure that we're all familiar with this sort of denialism by now. Bleeding out the ears isn't something that happens with heart attacks. As you can see, Matia Mubangizi saying, this is a heart attack. Ebola victims don't just collapse, they get really ill. Well, good question here. We'd all like the answer to this one. What happened to Ebola in Uganda? All of a sudden, the authorities and media stopped talking about it. When the old man came out and complained about inflation of cases, everybody just stopped talking about it. I think we need to do something. Let's start a hashtag that will awaken last pain. Got cut off. Based on past Ebola outbreaks, assumptions are made by many that this will not spread much outside of Africa. In case nobody has paid attention to this, that doesn't mean that it will be stopped this time. Uganda went ahead with the global trade fair while the virus was spreading rampantly. And so we should face reality and prepare seriously to stop the virus when or if it starts to take off here. Uganda and other affected regions should be given immediate assistance and placed in a lockdown. As we know, the WHO advised against China's locking down of Wuhan in January 2020. But China made the right decision and did it anyway. China is obviously a lot more commercially developed than Uganda, but nonetheless, Uganda did do lockdowns for COVID. So a few weeks of it in the affected and surrounding regions seem like a good idea right now. So we're still waiting to see exactly the aftermath of all this stuff. The CDC did activate its sort of Ebola alert system and is on watch for it in the US, but yeah. All right, let's catch up with the chat. Unfortunately, until now, we can't make vaccines for lots of viruses. Quarantine and mitigation measures are the best strategies, but after COVID, we adopted the let it rip strategy over every one of those. Yeah. I mean, in the spring of 2020, there were shutdowns. And there were lots of reactionary protests against it. We covered videos about that at the time. And, the governments decided to open up, even though the shutdowns were working. And then we saw in late June and July of 2020, the cases started climbing and they didn't stop. And now we're here with a greatly mutated virus, and that's where we're at. Literally none of the people in the rooms I work in are wearing masks, nor the people that used to. So COVID is really going to hit hard. How people in the U.S. responded to COVID makes me worried about future pandemics. What do you mean future pandemics? What's this future word that you're using? What is this future of which you speak? No, live in the now, forget the past, and don't worry about the future. That's what Joe Biden told me. And how average people will react. No reason to think that these hardcore anti-maskers would wear one for Ebola. No, you can hear the conspiracy theories now of like whatever it is, it's a hoax, or like it's to help the Democrats win the election or something. Like, you can hear it now. I'll bet that at least 25% of those who refuse the COVID vaccine are now long-term anti-vaxxers. Oh yeah, they've been they've swallowed the ideology of it. I know somebody who was working on, fairly vanilla social research, who got sucked into the anti-vax pipeline, and it's literally all they fucking talk about. And this is going on years now. It's like, would you please just shut up about the anti-vax stuff? So yeah, it becomes like a worldview. Absolutely. It would take the Black Death to get these people to even wear a mask. I'm not even sure that would do it, because there were people who were dying of COVID being hooked up onto the ventilator, and their last words were, I can't be dying of COVID. COVID isn't real. So that's how deep the denial is. Maybe outbreaks occur because we're so stuffed in cities and travel from one to another place all the time. Yeah, I mean, diseases can spread. We're definitely living in very densely packed situations. And you can see that in epidemiology, like where there is more of a slum with bad conditions and people really packed in. If a pathogen gets in there, it can really, really spread. So that will definitely be favorable circumstances for spread. Definitely. And then, yeah, travel as well. I mean, all viruses should be considered global now, because look at monkeypox. There were never cases of that. There would be a handful of cases, like, very, very rarely. And it's become more frequent. And now we have 30,000 officially recorded cases in the U.S. and counting. Terrifying that ears and mouth bleeding is a thing with Ebola. Yeah, it causes hemorrhaging. So it just makes you bleed and bleed. Yeah, on the one hand, the same people who say COVID's fake um, also, believe that they're living in the literal biblical end times. So massive, check out my merch shop so you can pick up my heavy metal detoxing kit. Yeah, it's massively contradictory stuff. You're right. I was in health classes not even 6 years ago, and anti-vaxxers were a total laughingstock to everyone. Now it's spreading as fast as COVID. I heard somebody, I didn't really understand what they were saying at first, but there was somebody who was saying, like, these people are basically human extensions of the virus. And there's something to that. We know that, and I'm saying this a bit tongue in cheek, but like, we know that there are a wide variety of pathogens that can influence behavior of animals and humans. So, like, for example, there is, I forget the name of it, but there's a sexually transmitted infection. I want to say in rabbits was the example. But, it affects certain mammals, in other words. So it's a sexually transmitted infection, and it affects behavior by causing arousal and sexual desire. So literally, the STI makes the rabbits horny. So then they want to go spread it more. Everybody's heard, or many people have heard, about the different kinds of fungus that can, they act as parasites in like ants and caterpillars and things that cause different behaviors. There's other things that cause insects to climb up to like a really high point and then jump off, and when they hit the ground, they die and spread the thing. So pathogens definitely can cause changes in behavior, not just indirectly by like, brain damage and things like that, which COVID does cause. But yeah, you wonder if there's something that we don't understand yet, that our science hasn't picked up about the links between physiology and psychology, if there's some like COVID consciousness that is purely in the realm of speculation at this point. But who the fuck even knows? Because it's not incredibly, it's not serving the human population, I think, that way. Let's put it that way. Yeah, and the people who say just taking your vitamins will protect you from COVID, I understand that there's some data that, like, a lot of people who live in the north will have low vitamin D levels because if you're, well, there's only certain months out of the year that you can even get enough vitamin D from the sun. And then people wear clothes, so your skin's not necessarily as exposed, and we're not working outside, we're working inside. So a lot of people, their vitamin D levels are low, and then by the time you get into winter, they're super low. So if you're not supplementing with vitamin D, you can wind up with bad levels, and that better levels will, protect your health in a variety of ways, mood, and also defense against various infections and like zinc levels and things like that. But no, those are just going to help your defenses. It's not going to like completely prevent you from getting COVID. Especially, where COVID, as we're going to read another story about long COVID, it's not just about the risk of dying during the acute phase. Yeah, cordyceps, that was one of the funguses that I was talking about. So, do we know if airplanes are getting disinfected? I am not really sure of the status on that. I would imagine that they're all different. So, all right, let us move on to the next story now. I'm going to go back in and do a block of COVID stuff, and then we'll hit the chat, and then that will be today's stream. We're still not going to get to a lot of the stuff. I'm going to just try to blast through this, though. So this is from Eyewitness News, ABC 7. If you had COVID, several of your organs could be aging 3 to 4 years faster, study shows. This is by Luz Pena. You can start thinking about getting COVID as almost an accelerant to aging. Yep, that's what we've been covering over and over, whether it's the effects on the brain or whatever. Out of San Francisco, after 2.5 years of COVID research, scientists are seeing the first data points that prove a dramatic change in human organs after a COVID infection. Quote, you can start thinking about COVID as almost an accelerant to aging. I think you can take the almost out. The viral infection accelerates the aging process in people, said Dr. Ziad Al-Ali, director of the Clinical Epidemiology Center at Washington University in St. Louis, and the chief of research and education service at Veterans Affairs St. Louis Healthcare System. Dr. Al-Ali gathered data from millions of people across the country. Their studies on kidney outcomes in long COVID in the brain, and long COVID in the heart had similar patterns, all pointing to multiple human organs aging faster after COVID, the majority happening among people who are hospitalized, but also some with milder COVID symptoms. Quote, almost 3 to 4 years in the span of just 1 year, Dr. Al-Ali added. What we have seen is that people are losing about 3 to 4% kidney function in the year that follows that infection. That usually happens with aging, 3 to 4 years of aging. We took these findings to Dr. Michael Peluso, infectious disease specialist at UCSF. His team was one of the first in the country to begin long COVID research in April of 2020. Quote, Dr. Al-Ali's group at the VA in St. Louis, things rife with typos, has been really important in trying to frame the issues of what people experience after they have COVID, particularly the effects on the organ system after somebody has COVID. Now, what we're trying to do is actually figure out what is the biology of what causes those long-term effects. There's a picture there. Because so many residents in LA County have dealt with COVID infections, many now view the virus like a common cold or flu, but new research and actually also old research suggests that's far from the truth. Dr. Peluso said that his team has an idea of why some organs may be experiencing aging or injury after COVID. Quote, some of the theories for what may be causing long COVID symptoms include persistence of the virus. So instead of the virus coming and going, it sticks around. You're no longer in that acute phase, but it sticks around, causing inflammation and autoimmune problems, changes in the microbiome, the good bacteria that are in our bodies. Even though more years of data are necessary, Dr. Al-Ali believes that this increased aging process will eventually stop. Quote, "My hunch from the data and also my hope that this would really eventually flatten out, and there are some indications that this may be the case, that the risk of the kidney function decline does flatten out with time." So, but how many, so it may flatten out, but what did it shave off of your life? 6 years, 7 years, 10 years by that point? Anyway, here's a story somebody was asking about, the Boston University researchers they made a engineered version of Omicron to study something. Anyway, let's read through this real quick. This was kind of interesting from Florian Kramer. Boston University researchers have made a SARS coronavirus 2 virus that has the spike of Omicron BA.1 and the remaining genome of the ancestral SARS coronavirus 2. Now they got in trouble because this research was funded by the US government, NIH, but they didn't ask the NIH if they were allowed to do this. Here's an excellent overview article about the case. They're from Stat News, which is unfortunately hidden behind a paywall. I like Stat a lot, but I can't read their articles anymore. And here's the study itself. Link there to bioRxiv. It is robust research. We know Omicron variants are less pathogenic in the mouse model. The group helped to establish that, in mice, the spike itself is not responsible for this attenuation. It seems that the attenuation has more to do with the rest of the genome. Now, to be very clear, the ancestral version of the virus, unmodified, was more deadly than the chimeric or hybrid version with the Omicron spike. Now, XD, when put in mice, did the same. Delta killed the mice, XD killed the mice, Omicron did not. Here is the paper. What is the point here? The point is, somebody did this experiment in controlled conditions and got in trouble for it. But Mother Nature did it already a while ago in humans, and nobody cared. Again, the problem is not that the experiment was done. The problem was that the researchers, it seems, did not ask for permission. Of note, other labs have legally made such viruses and have used them for serology assays without any problems. Example here. My take on this is the same as Angie Rasmussen's in the Stat article. Regulations are not easily accessible, even for experts in the field. This is not in the media because it's dangerous research. This is in the media because somebody didn't ask for permission, likely because they thought that they didn't need permission, which brings us back to overly complicated regulations. Having said all that, I absolutely think gain-of-function research should be tightly regulated and controlled. I want to add something here. The FDA did exactly the same experiment with a very similar outcome. This was published in September. So that's a little bit of follow-up on that, what somebody was talking about. All right, I'm going to skip that article. That is just less of a priority as we're trying to cram things in here. Let's talk about, definitely want to do XBB. And, well, while we're on more of the kind of sciencey side, let's talk about BQ and BQ.1 and BQ.1.1. So these are some of the new BA.5 derived strains that are driving the current surge, which is going to be making itself felt soon. I have a couple of threads on this. BQ.1 and BQ.1.1 analysis. I'll get this out of the way first. This is from SARS News Network at COVID Newsfast. I'm not going to try and predict how hard these variants can surge. I've spoken to a few experts in the field, and we simply do not know how crazy the surge will become. That being said, BQ.1 and BQ.1.1 are labeled as escape variants, sounds great, due to their ability to bypass monoclonal antibody treatments entirely. Research shows that BQ.1 and BQ.1.1 are extremely resistant to current treatments. These subvariants come from BA.5. So monoclonal antibodies are cloned antibodies that are a treatment that they give to people who are hospitalized or otherwise having acute cases. Your body makes antibodies to handcuff and neutralize the virus and drag it away to be digested and excreted. Monoclonal antibodies help you out by basically infusing you with, cloned antibodies. But the cloned antibodies don't work on this one, so we're shit out of luck. And we don't want this to spread, but it is spreading. Current data shows promise that the data is plural, so current data show promise, there we go, that the new bivalent BA.5 booster shot provides adequate protection against BQ.1 and BQ.1.1. That is good news. The data is very preliminary for the time being, however, and we need more information to know for sure. That being said, BQ.1 and 1.1 are poised to begin surging in the US. Models have it going parabolic towards Thanksgiving. You can see there in the chart, that's where things start going crazy. We're in the infantile stages of collecting data, which has been severely hindered by global governments, essentially kneecapping the crucial data that we need to properly analyze risk. We've showed that before. The Pentagon model, it doesn't mean it came from the Pentagon. I mean, it incorporated five, hence Pentagon, 5 strains which are currently surging but are not dominant yet. The place to pay attention to right now is New York. It looks like New York will be the starting place, again, as it has been for previous waves. New York will be the microcosm needed to analyze BQ.1 and 1.1 more accurately. We can only hope that BQ.1 and 1.1 has the same level of lethality as its ancestor BA.5. This doesn't mean to just pretend it isn't happening. The risks of long COVID is very real and still extremely prevalent. It'll be interesting to see how PAX holds up to these two beasts. As always, the time to prepare is now, not later. Don't wait until you're already peaking. Stock up on rapid tests, N95 masks, and practice your social distancing and reduce your exposure to large gatherings when possible. The fact that this could go parabolic on Thanksgiving is dire. Thanksgiving is the second largest mass transit event, only to be surpassed by Christmas. And the peak of Omicron was a week after Christmas last year. So what does that tell you? This will most certainly lead to yet another super spreading event during a very pivotal time. I don't think the government's going to do a damn thing to help either. We're on our own. Well, but don't just take that. There need to be protests and other things, which everyone is just falling down on. But again, we're trying to at least keep the torch burning on that. The days of mass testing are over. Again, I would add, for now, unless you demand them, which people seem to forget that that's an option. We're left to fend for ourselves, and if it wasn't clear by now, especially with the CDC themselves burying the fact that BQ.1 and 1.1 is starting to surge, we're going to cover the CDC covering that up in just a minute, then you will never get it. To my readers, please do your best to stay safe. Just know that you're not alone. You're not crazy for continuing to wear your mask and continuing to do your best to protect yourself and your loved ones. The world governments have abandoned us. It's up to us as a community to take care of each other. I agree, and I would also suggest taking care of each other means demanding public action. Credit goes to Dr. Eric Ding for the model in this thread. That was the Pentagon model. He has been one of the very few sticking to the truth and looking out for the little guy. I deeply respect Dr. Eric Ding. Please give him a follow if you haven't already. Thank you everyone for reading, etc. So let's get down to Feigl Ding's new Mother of God thread. You know, people criticize this guy. I think for somebody who is out in front as much as he is, he gets it right I was going to say more than he does wrong. I'd say most of the time. Most of the trends he's covered have been things to be concerned about. So anyway. So this is the thread here, and this is from the 14th. Just got this leak from a CDC insider source. It seems that COVID variants worse than CDC... Oh, see, Twitter abbreviations is hard to... All right. It seems that COVID variants are worse than CDC has been admitting. The new highly evasive BQ.1 and BQ.1.1 subvariants are surging over 11%. So that's what we were just talking about. This is no longer hypothetical, it's surging now. But the CDC has not shared it yet. Here's what will be posted soon on the left versus the current. So let me just blow this up for you. Here is what was on the CDC's website. All right, you can see there, we've showed this graphic before. This is from their Nowcast. If you go to variants and genomic proportions on their CDC, on the COVID tracker on the CDC website. Now you can see their lineage, BA5, BA4.6, and so on down the line. None of them are BQ. And what it says right below that, it's blurry in this image, but basically their stated methods are any variant that is at 1% or higher gets put into this graphic. Okay, well, that's what it says. So people reading this will say, oh, well, if it's not on there, then it's not over 1%. Except what? The CDC then retroactively, see the black and the green that aren't in this one? Yeah, those are the BQs. They were previously just folded into BA5, and now they're retroactively being added in. And they're being added in at the current week, and this is last week, being 5.7% each. These are not BA5. They are BQ.1 and BQ.1. Now, they are derived from BA5, but they have significant new behavior and characteristics. So that's 6 weeks retroactive of this. So basically, it's been here for quite a while, and the CDC just hasn't been putting it into the chart. So let's get some more information on this. All right, let's shrink it down again too. All right, I cannot describe how mad I am at this disaster. BQ.1 and BQ.1 are two of the most evasive variants known to date, and CDC seems to have been holding on to this data. Can it be true? Why did this data have to leak to me from insider sources? It's so bad. So how bad is it? People don't get what I mean by among the most evasive. The BQ.1 Typhon and BQ.1 Cerberus are basically dubbed escape variants because they escape from immunity. So here is a chart showing the further up the chart it goes, that's how much it can escape immunity. And then the further right it goes shows the surge. Basically, so technically, as you go to the right, it's average ACE2 receptor binding. The ACE2 receptors are receptors in your body's cells that COVID infects the cells through. So ACE2 binding is basically like the infectivity. There are other measures, or like there's other factors in its ability to infect you, but that's a major one. So we can see XBB in the sort of upper left. That's not, it doesn't have the same level of infectiousness, but it has over 90% immune evasion. Then the two circled ones labeled surging, BQ.1 and BQ.1, they're among the highest ACE2 affinity strains that we know of. There's only a few things above them, BA.2.756, BA.2.320, BA.2.755, and BL2. But BQ.1 is over 80% immune escape, and then BQ.1 is over 60% immune escape. Now compare this back to, like, what are the lower things on this chart? BA.2, you know, some of the BA.1s aren't even on here. So we're in just new territory at this point, and it's really alarming. Anyway, CDC data are only updated once a week. Since we have a barely functioning CDC, we need to thank all the diligent variant trackers. Follow those people if you are on Twitter. A couple of them have blocked me, not entirely sure why, but anyway, we scientists have been predicting the explosion of BQ.1 and BQ.1 for weeks now. We've seen the explosion in sequencing data. Look at that exponential surge. This is why I think the BQ family of subvariants will likely be deadly in coming months. So this is sequences over time, and that red one there, you can see how much bigger it is than the others. That's the BQ family. That's really not good. That's flattening the curve, but in the wrong direction. Come back. $1 million question. So does the bivalent BA5 booster shot work against BQ.1 and BQ.1? I think so, Ding says. BQ are subtypes of the BA5 branch family, and in neutralization studies of BA5 infection, akin to the BA5 booster, the BQ subvariants still neutralize pretty well, and you can see it in the charts there. But BQ.1 and BQ.1 are totally resistant to major monoclonal antibody drugs. They effectively escape Evusheld and bebtelovimab. So basically, MAB drugs are useless now against these two new BQ variants, and you can see the data there. The strains are listed on the left, BQ.1, BU1, BQ.1, and there's just a little asterisk there. They just don't respond to that. So let's hope you don't get a case that severe where you need it. So this was going back to the Pentagon model that was incorporating those 5 different strains, including the BQs. And yeah, so the CDC has a rule to report any variant over 1%, and they just didn't for weeks on end. The CDC website for Nowcast has been updated. This is now exactly what I posted last night that the insider leaked. BQ.1 and BQ.1 are now listed in the variant list for the first time ever, despite having been over 1% for weeks. So, all right, I want to jam in a couple more things. We had a bunch of stuff on long COVID, and I have covered that a lot. Let's see what we have. Okay, no, we did that one already. And have an article here I would like to at least just take a quick look at. So this is from Rolling Stone. First they got long COVID, then it made them homeless. It's estimated that millions of Americans have developed chronic illness as a result of COVID-19 infection. For some, especially those in the gig economy, it's made them unable to support themselves. This is from back in February. So, I mean, we've known about these problems for a while. So just to read one piece of this article, cold weather is brutal for Wendy Taylor. After living with long COVID for 2 years, she knows that when the temperature drops, the pain and discomfort increases. This is especially true because of the severe arthritis in her hands, which only developed following her initial COVID-19 infection. She says that doing dishes during cold weather is probably the hardest part, about living in the makeshift cabin she built from tarps and an 8x8 metal pop-up awning frame that she found in the garage. I heat water on the stove, but when it's below freezing, it cools down quickly, and contact with the water causes extreme pain in my hands. It feels like being burned and smashed with a sledgehammer at the same time. And it takes a long time for the pain to stop. Even just going outside can cause my hands to turn red and swell and have pain like that. It has made me curl up on my bed and cry more than once. At the foot of her twin mattress, atop a small table, sits a small green camping stove that she uses both to cook and heat her 64 square foot living space. A row of plastic storage cabinets is situated at the head of her bed. Quote, arranging it this way leaves room in the center to sit in a folding chair, or to stand up to change clothes, or to set groceries down when I come in from the store. After riding out last year's historic ice storm, which left at least 246 Texas residents dead in a previous camp, when Taylor found out about the major winter storm at the beginning of this month, she went in prepared. She reinforced the tarps that function as the walls of her cabin, and she ensured that the poles of its frame were firmly anchored into the ground. One of Taylor's biggest concerns this time was having the propane that she needed to operate her stove. Power outages matter little to me, but they will buy all the propane if their electric heat goes off, Taylor, 41, tells Rolling Stone, referring to housed individuals. This is one of the biggest issues we face. Supplies we depend on daily become unavailable when they're hoarded by housed people for emergencies. Fortunately, 2022 storm ended up being far less severe than the one in 2021. Instead of having to go weeks without propane, stores near Taylor's camp in Houston were restocked within days. That made it far easier to stay warm, she explains. I could just hole up inside and avoid opening the door at all for the most part. And there is the situation that she's living in. This isn't what Taylor's life was like prior to COVID-19. In fact, things were starting to look up during the first week of March 2020. She was working steadily as a day laborer in construction and landscaping in the Houston area and was living in an extended stay motel, saving up to get an apartment. I was one paycheck away from being able to do so when I got sick, Taylor says, noting that her first COVID-19 symptoms, a sore throat, fever, and hacking cough, began on March 7. Although Taylor still felt run down weeks later, she wasn't initially alarmed by her lengthy convalescence. After all, it took her several months to recover after she contracted the H1N1 flu in 2009. I figured this would be the same kind of thing, she says. Lots of comparisons were being made to that pandemic. But nearly 2 years later, Taylor is still sick. Quote, one day I saw a list of common long COVID symptoms that numbered over 200, and I've had most of them, she said, noting that like many people living with long COVID, her symptoms are neither consistent nor constant, varying in combination and intensity over days and weeks. And while fatigue, rashes, and neurocognitive issues are among her most persistent and disruptive symptoms, it's the severe, sudden onset arthritis, so inflammation in the joints, that makes coping with daily life the hardest. Because my hands are particularly affected, I had to learn new ways of doing simple tasks, like tying my shoes or buttoning clothes, she explains. And since getting COVID, I haven't been able to work for more than a day or two at a time. Without an income, Taylor had no choice but to move out of the motel and into a tent behind the dumpster of the local donut shop. She estimates that over the course of the spring and summer of 2020, she stayed in at least 24 different places, ranging from a cardboard box to friends' couches to motel rooms. By the fall of 2020, the constant moving was too much for Taylor, so she built the first of her longer-term camps. At that point, my neurological symptoms were getting progressively worse, and in retrospect, I think I was subconsciously building a place to die, she says. Taylor had spent the past year living in her makeshift cabin under a sprawling oak tree on a dead-end street near the Astrodome. Astrodome. I don't know what the Astroderm is. It's where you grow skin in space. I don't know. I'm basically a hermit these days, she says. COVID trashed my immune system, so I mostly keep to myself and stay at my camp as much as possible. But Taylor is one of many people whose COVID-19 infection morphed into a chronic illness that unraveled their lives, first taking their health, then their financial stability. For some, the multiple burdens of living with long COVID resulted in losing their housing. And for at least one person, long COVID was the first in a series of events that ended in their death. Quote, "We are only beginning to scratch the surface of understanding the effects of long COVID on folks' financial well-being, including their housing security or lack thereof," says Megan Ranney, MD, the Associate Dean for Strategy and Innovation at Brown University, and co-leader of the School of Public Health's Long COVID Initiative. Unfortunately, for much of America, living with long COVID is enough to put folks over the edge financially, with very limited safety nets. One thing we were having this before COVID too, and it's this much worse. And why do we keep covering COVID? Because every time there's a surge, more people end up in the situation. Or you're housed, but you're living in terror of what's going to happen in 3 months or whatever. This is no way to live. One thing we do know about long COVID is that it encompasses a wide range of symptoms and severity. So while some people living with long COVID are able to continue working without a problem, others, especially those with physically demanding gig economy jobs, don't have that option. Our country does not do a great job of supporting people, that's one way of putting it, in ways that allow them to continue to work and take care of their families while living with chronic medical conditions, Rainey explains. There's obviously a knock-on effect. If you can't work and can't get disability, at some point you're going to lose your house. So this article actually goes on for quite a while and covers many other case stories of people who became homeless due to long COVID. You can look up the article and read it. I can't read it all right now. Let's move on to the next thing. So this was another story or another person, Jorge Caballero, at Data Driven MD, who was also covering that thing about BQ.1. Whoops, wrong one. The thing about BQ.1 and BQ.1 not being put on the CDC website. He had basically the same take that Feigelding had, and just wanted to point that out, that a lot of people in medical and COVID Twitter were talking about this because it's such like a blatant failure of, just what the CDC is supposed to be doing. They've been falling down all over the place. Mention another headline here. This is from the Evening Standard. COVID. Number of weekly deaths in England and Wales jumps by nearly 40%. Rise in fatalities reflects a sharp increase in cases in the past month. We'll just look at this quickly, but this is what's going on now. There's a big surge in Germany, and there's a surge in the UK. Deaths linked to COVID-19 in England have seen their highest weekly rise since late August, amid a new wave of infections, according to new figures. The Office for National Statistics said that 400 deaths mentioning COVID-19 on the death certificate have been registered in the week ending October 7, a rise of 39% on the week before. Again, we're 1 month into fall at this point. Just barely 1 month into fall. Anyway, rise of 39%. It was the highest weekly death toll since the week up to August 26 and reflects a rise in infections that began last month. Fatalities usually lag infections by around 2 weeks. Again, lagging indicator, because you'll get COVID first, it'll show up in the wastewater, then maybe we get a test, then a hospitalization, then a death. Nearly two-thirds, or 63.5% of the 400 deaths, recorded COVID-19 as the underlying cause, up from 63.1% the week before. However, deaths remain far below levels recorded at the peak of the pandemic in 2020 and last year. Yeah, that's because there was no vaccine or anything. I think the point here is that even with these things, we're still having massive problems. The article kind of devolves into that sort of minimization. Like, the headline is, it's the problem that you think it is, and then they sort of try to hypnotize you out of it. Last thing before we go back to the chat and end today's stream, something about XBB, which we saw on that immunity evasion chart. We talked about the BQ strains. Let's talk about XBB for a minute. The XBB family of Omicron has landed in the U.S. Here's what it means for this fall's COVID wave by Aaron Prater. This is from 2 days ago, Tuesday the 18th. Please cooperate, mouse. XBB, a new, extremely immune-evasive Omicron variant surging in Singapore, hasn't yet been detected in the U.S., but its child has. XBB.1 was first detected in the U.S. on September 15 and made up 0.26% of cases that were genetically sequenced over the past 15 days. Raj Narayanan, Assistant Dean of Research and Associate Professor at the New York Institute of Technology campus in Jonesboro, Arkansas, told Fortune. He cited data from GISAID, an international research organization that tracks changes in COVID and the flu virus. Only 16 XBB.1 cases have been detected in the U.S. so far, and most have been found in New York, considered a bellwether state because of its volume of incoming international travelers and robust genetic sequencing capabilities. XBB is a combination of two different Omicron spawns, so it's recombinant. Now, recombination can be done scientifically in a lab. It can also happen if you get infected with two different strains and they recombine or swap genetic material in your body. That's what the X means it's recombinant. It, along with BQ.1, is considered to be the most immune-evasive COVID variant so far. So as far as the person saying, isn't COVID getting weaker? No, quite the opposite. Surpassing the immune evasiveness of shared ancestor BA.5, which was dominant around the globe this summer. Scientists, including top infectious disease expert Dr. Anthony Fauci, expect a fall and winter wave of cases in the U.S. that begins to surge in October and peaks in January. So literally exactly like last year. Why are they saying that the pandemic's over? It's still unclear which COVID variant may fuel that wave. Well, most likely it's going to be more than one variant because that's what's happening right now. On Friday, we had BA.2, BA.4, and BA.5 all going at the same time. Then successor strains like BA.2.75, BA.4.6, and then all of the things that BA.5 has kicked out are all going. So, yeah. Anyway, on Friday, the U.S. Centers for Disease announced that heavyweight Omicron spawn BQ.1 and BQ.1 are in the U.S. and quickly rising, with XBB present as With XBB present as well, the scene has been set for a potential battle royale, should have an E on it, between two formidable variants. Compared to XBB, XBB.1 features just one small change to the spike protein, which the virus uses to attach to and infect cells. The impact of that alteration is unknown, according to Raj Narayanan. Okay, it's a hard name to rush through. Couple more pains here. It's one of multiple XBB offspring being eyed by variant trackers globally that are helping fuel Singapore's wave, despite a significantly vaccinated and boosted population. Pick your poison. Raj Narayanan isn't worried about one variant in particular right now, as current Omicron spawn are all picking up similar mutations that confer advantages like increased transmissibility and additional ability to evade immune systems. He's keeping a close eye on XBB, but he's keeping a closer eye on BQ.1, which along with parent BQ.1 was estimated to make up more than 11 cases in the U.S. last week. That is the beginning, I think, of a big surge. This on the first day, the two variants were broken out into their own categories from ancestor BA.5. BQ.1 is surging in New York and also rising in European countries like Germany, where Oktoberfest celebrations may have served as superspreader events. Its extreme immune evasiveness sets it up to be the principal driver of the next U.S. wave in the weeks ahead. Dr. Eric Topol, a professor of molecular medicine at Scripps Research and founder and director of the Scripps Research Translational Institute, tweeted on Friday. On Thursday, he told Fortune that scientists won't know to what extent it evades vaccine protection, if it does, until it reaches 30% to 50% of cases somewhere. Why? Because this is a novel virus. We're unfamiliar with it. It's brand new, and we have to see what it does. Or we could, stop transmission and put the thing in the ground. But no, we're not going to do that, are we? No, of course not. You're running the risk of brain damage and everything else that COVID can cause, and does cause in like a sixth of people, even who are fully vaccinated and boosted. It's not going to wipe out vaccine efficacy, but it could put a dent in protection against hospitalizations and death, he said. A dwindling toolbox and an upcoming fight. Both XBB and BQ.1 are known to escape antibody immunity, rendering useless monoclonal antibody treatments used in high-risk individuals with COVID. According to a study last month out of Peking University's Biomedical Pioneering Innovation Center in China, both escape immunity from bebtelovimab, the last monoclonal antibody drug that's effective on all variants, as well as Evusheld, which works on some. And both could lead to more severe symptoms, the authors write. The ability of XBB to evade immunity is, quote, extreme, approaching the level of immune evasion shown by SARS-1, a coronavirus that infected thousands and caused nearly 800 deaths in the early 2000s. Now, where did that happen? It happened in Asia, where they actually controlled the spread. But in the U.S., you're not looking at 800 deaths. You're looking at many, many more, maybe 800,000 deaths. Much, much worse scenario. Because SARS had like 15% mortality. That's not like SARS-2 or COVID. It's much, much, much higher. So that's what this is approaching. This is now approaching SARS, so like SARS-1. Congrats. This is entirely the product of spreading it. This wouldn't have happened without, human stupidity, basically. And this is due to capitalism because that's why all the businesses had to stay open. Okay. BQ.1 and XBB are so distinct from other Omicron strains that they should be granted new Greek letter names, like Pi or Rho, by the WHO, Topol told Fortune last week. Yeah, absolutely. BA2, BA4, BA5, they should all have new Greek letters. Like, we shouldn't still be calling these things Omicron. They came out of Omicron, but they need new letters. Whether the two strains eventually battle for dominance in the U.S. or anywhere else remains to be seen. They may even find themselves sparring in one host, and the result could be a strain that combines the two. Ryan Gregory, a professor of evolutionary biology at the University of Guelph in Ontario, Canada, told Fortune. Or descendants of the two might find themselves battling it out instead. With the virus's record rate of evolution, the possibilities are seemingly endless. So yeah, that was the last pane there. Like I said, Novavax is available from what I've read, and you'll need to check this out as well. Don't just listen to me on this. This just got approved as a booster. From everything I've read, it's the best. I will be eagerly awaiting when this gets approved for not just the first booster, but beyond. Now, anyway, we're basically at the end of the stream. Let's wrap up with some chat. I know that the COVID thing, it's not as popular with everybody, but other people come to the channel specifically for this. So we do it. It's something that concerns me a lot. I had long COVID, and it was debilitating for me. And I don't want to get it again, and I don't want any of you to get it. So this is an important thing that we should be, dealing with. All right, anyway, what do we have for comments? People will say only 3 or 4 years off your kidneys. How many will it be for Gen Z people who get it 5+ times by the time that they're 50? Yeah, that's the thing. We've covered the risk of repeated reinfections. When you get your first, second, and third reinfections, they've done studies on this now. We've covered it before. Your risk of serious health conditions, whether it's neurological disorders, whether it's blood clotting, whatever, or whether it's both, as in the case of like a stroke, for example, it goes up with every reinfection. So these are not things that you want. We can't keep this charade going that COVID isn't dangerous for young people. Yes, absolutely correct. We must demand measures, not following blindly the so-called governmental experts' instructions. And again, the problem here is science is constrained by capitalism. Science is always subordinated to the need for short-term profits, and so the science will be known. Somebody will have conducted it, but it cannot be implemented because profits are prioritized over that. My mom's breast cancer cost just under $500,000. That's all she would tell me. So yeah, fuck America. The Greek alphabet only has 24 letters. Better start using Chinese instead, because there will just be that many variants. And who knows at this point? It's nice to at least be able to do these streams and have people in the chat to talk about this with. I know people in real life who do take it seriously, and I know people in real life who don't take it seriously at all. But yeah, for God's sake, normalize talking about fucking COVID. It's a serious disease. So many people have just been captured by the capitalist-driven discourse. There's nothing that alarms me more than when people who aren't wearing masks indoors say shit like, after COVID. Yeah, Biden just said it recently. I have to work with these fuckers. And a bit of good news, I served 2 cops and an imperialist decaf today. I'm a barista. Well, we do what we can, both for material observable effects and to psychologically cope. So, good for you. Yeah, the last thing that trigger-happy racist agents of, armed agents of the domestic police state need is to be drinking large quantities of chemicals that are going to increase their levels of irritability and agitation. So good for you. All right, we're going to leave it there today, and that is most likely the last stream for this week. And I think we're going to be back again next week doing something similar in the Tuesday through Thursday category. So keep your eyes peeled on the YouTube community tab. I always announce everything there as far as streaming, usually same day, because it's hard to forecast that ahead. Thanks to everybody for dropping in the chat. There's 39 people listening right now. Your comments help to make this what it is, and then that helps everybody listening after the fact on YouTube and SoundCloud. So anyway, this community has grown a lot. We're up to 10,600 subscribers on the YouTube and 7,400 on the Twitter. And anyway, I appreciate everybody being here, and we do have to keep growing and growing. Not just this channel, obviously, but the movement for socialism and the people who are ready to move beyond liberalism and individualism and start taking, real proletarian organizing seriously beyond the Democratic Party, beyond, anarchism, etc. We need to do things where these protests and movements can actually add up to something year after year, that we build organization, we build a left coalition, we take our parties and organizations and unions and build something where working class people can actually come together and strategize about class struggle in a space that is free of bourgeois influence. When we talk about building a party, building a coalition, building a network, that's what we're talking about. It's not just about winning elections. Building a party and winning elections are not the same thing. Building a party means building a group of people who are in contact with each other, organizing, and in dialogue and serving their community. That's called building a party. If that party at some point wants to engage in electoral forms of struggle, then that's up to them. In some places that's going to make more sense than others. But building a party doesn't mean winning elections. Building a party means building a party. But we'll leave it there. Thanks again, and we will see you in the next video.